Welcome and thank you for tuning in to Duma Sports today. Big Ten Conference expansion. You go from 14 teams to 18 in semi-breaking news. It's been about a week. But there's still a lot to unfold, probably for years to come. So even though we're not right on the ball, I still feel like there is a ton, to break down and just to kind of talk about. So I guess handing it to you, Deli, what are your initial thoughts?
Oh, I think it's great. It's absolutely great for the entire conference, top to bottom. Really, these teams coming in, it's going to make the Big Ten more competitive. It's going to set the Big Ten up for success, to where now it's really the Big Ten and the SEC. And for a lot of years, I think even people around the country were like, other than the Big Ten, facility teams and teams that are within the Big Ten, everyone was like the SEC is the tier, right? Like they were the top, and then the Big Ten was like just right below them, kind of nipping at their heels a little bit. But now we're there, right? With these teams coming in, the only thing that this is going to do is help the Big Ten, in my opinion. Like I said, from top to bottom, it's the Big Ten's going to get more competitive from this.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. There are a couple things. I have some critiques, but we'll kind of wait for that. But for now, who are these teams? Everyone knows who these teams are, but what are they bringing to the Big Ten?
Well, each one brings their own unique identity, and it's really fascinating when you break down each one of these teams and what they're going to bring, what kind of contributions they're going to do to the conference. Obviously, USC and UCLA, they're within their own state, in the same state in California. And California as a whole, for anyone who doesn't know and is listening, they are unbelievably talented at almost everything, and particularly football. Right now, in the class of 2023, there was 3 5-stars, 30 4-star recruits that came out of the state of California. You take half of those and get half of those recruits
Into the Big Ten or for those teams
into
solely?
the Big Ten. I
Okay,
mean,
yeah,
right
yeah,
now, USC can't even get those recruits. It's Georgia and Alabama getting those recruits. If you get even half of those, you're taking a 5-star, maybe 2 away from Georgia and Alabama, who are getting them right now. And you're bringing them into the Big Ten, making it more competitive. And now we have a foothold to lock down the state of California. With USC, UCLA, we are going to play Big Ten football in that state, show these recruits who is the best conference in the country, not just the SEC and Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, but the Big Ten. We're the powerhouse.
yeah. And I still, we'll break down. I think because now, yeah, you're looking at least for football, Big Ten versus SEC, and we'll kind of get into that. So you're bringing all this talent. You're hoping if you're a recruit, from over there, you're hoping to get some more exposure. I guess you get some exposure. You're getting more media coverage because the Pac-12 network failed, which was why these teams came over here, and they still don't have a deal. The Big Four that's left, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. Stanford, Cal, Washington State, and then Oregon State, right? Those
Right.
four. We'll see what happens with them. There's talks about them joining the ACC. That fell through pretty quick. They don't want them. People throughout the Mountain West, I don't see Stanford or Cal doing that.
I see Stanford going independent.
Yeah, they got a lot of
Stanford,
money.
I think they're going to go independent. I think we both kind of are in agreement on that. Washington State and Oregon State. Now that's an interesting conversation. Cal, I think, has just been so bad for so long. They've had like one good stretch, and that was in the early 2000s when USC just lost Pete Carroll, and they had a slightly good stretch right there. But other than that, they're going to struggle, I believe, to find a conference because they're not really involved too much within any of their sports. Stanford, independent. Washington State and Oregon State, though.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where they
That
go.
is interesting. I could see them going to the Big Ten. That's the funniest
I don't-
thing. I don't want the Big Ten to become a huge, absolute mega conference, but Oregon State and Washington State, it would make sense for them to come to the Big Ten because they both have rivalries with Washington and Oregon. And right now they're still protected. They're going to do those in the three game, or I think they're going down now with the Big Ten to 2 non-conference games, possibly. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I believe those are still protected rivalries that they're going to attempt to do every year. But I could see them easily, since they can't join the ACC and the ACC doesn't want anything to do with them. I don't see really where else they would go because the Mountain West itself is such a lower tier conference compared to what the Pac-12 used to be, and the Pac-12 wasn't even that good for a long stretch there, and compared definitely to what the Big Ten is now. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see him join the Big Ten personally. But it evened it out to 20.
yeah, and I mean that would be and we could get a true West and a true East going as a conference realignment, 10-10.
Yeah, but then it'd be like, why even leave? I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm guessing those two will go to the Mountain West and probably do really well for programs that they're good.
Yeah.
They go in there, they have a good shot to be the top of that conference, and because it's a Power 4 now, that could be the next Power 5 conference out in West.
It could, but man, they got a lot of work to do.
They do. They definitely
to be a
do.
Power 5.
So I guess looking at, we're talking about all these conferences. I guess we'll just jump into it now. So it's SEC, Big Ten. The Pac-12 is no more. The ACC, it's more of a basketball conference, if you can even say that anymore. But so I guess if you throw the two conferences, head to head, you're thinking the Big Ten is now superior to the SEC.
Yeah, definitely, and it's not. I don't even think it's close right now.
Okay.
And the reason I say it's not even close is simply because of California.
Mm-hmm.
California, like I previously said, has so many recruits. It is not funny. The state itself has so many recruits. It's not funny. You could say that about Texas as well. So it somewhat offsets, I guess, with the SEC now getting Texas. But with the Big Ten also getting Oregon,
Yeah.
all that money from Nike is now coming into the Big Ten. The Big Ten's going to get an exclusive deal with Nike now. They're going to get an exclusive deal.
Yeah. I'd be on the other side of that. I still think what that did, for the Big Ten, it was like someone used a comparison to like a cheap bag of chips. Like if you don't like barbecue chips, but they're on sale compared to like your normal flavor, like, yeah, I'll just pick up the barbecue chips because they're discounted. They're like, all right, they're available, so we'll pick them up. But then you look at the SEC bringing in Oklahoma and Texas, it makes so much sense actually, because they're the most. They probably their programs are worth the most. So you bring them into the SEC geographically, it makes sense. I still think I don't see a world where the Big Ten actually overtakes the SEC in the near future. Maybe down the line, but we pulled it up here. The SEC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 college football championships since the integration of the playoff system.
Yeah, obviously the SEC, I have said, was the major conference, but I don't think they're going to be that moving forward. Like I said, California has a ton of recruits, great recruits coming out of the state of California. On top of that, on top of all those great recruits, you have Nike giving all that money away, and they're going to give it to the Big Ten exclusively. And yes, geographically, those teams are far away from the main part of the Big Ten. Okay? But what does that do? You are now going to get coverage of college football, and let's just go Central Time Zone, from around 10 a.m., or even 9 if you want to call it college game day, if you want to watch, College Game Day on
Yeah.
ESPN. You're going to get it from 9 all the way possibly past midnight.
Yeah, and solely Big Ten games too.
And solely Big Ten, and then obviously the coverage beforehand, a little bit of College Game Day and all that good stuff. So you're going to get all that coverage of Big Ten games. Like what? If you're a Big Ten fan, I am so hyped for this right now. I am going to get to see more football than I have ever gotten to experience in my life. I love it. I am so for it, so down for it. I don't see a bad side to these teams coming in whatsoever. I think they're going to overthrow the SEC because we're going to be on longer. You're going to see the Big Ten longer. The SEC might have one game where compared to us having 4 good games. So it might be an Alabama versus Texas where Texas somehow comes back and is really good with another good quarterback, say in 2 years or whatever.
Manning.
Yeah, Manning. And they're in a fight in Tuscaloosa, let's say, and that's the midday game. And at that time, it could be Penn State and Michigan playing.
Yeah.
And then at night, it could be Ohio State, USC out on the West Coast. And our early game was Oregon and Michigan State, or Oregon and Iowa.
Yeah, so your main thing, from what I'm getting, is you're getting all this coverage. The exposure in itself will lead to more success. Is kind of what you're okay. Yeah, which I could see it. I could see it, but not in the near future. I just can't. I don't.
Oh no,
it's gonna be a process.
Big Ten.
It's gonna be a process.
I don't think it will be though, because the Big Ten has set itself up for success. And what I mean by that is, and this we'll get into this a lot more later, but the recent surgence of now Michigan and Ohio State both being great Power Fives. That's been able to give the Big Ten more donors, more sponsors, more TV rights, more media rights, more exposure, and a lot more commercials. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a lot more commercials in college football now. And Michigan games are a ton more compared to what they were 5 years ago. All that's doing is helping the Big Ten because they're getting money off that. They're getting so much money off that.
Yeah, but where's that money going? To the media rights? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean,
it's going back into itself.
It goes back into itself. It also goes back into the teams. It goes, it funnels itself around, I believe, within the Big Ten and within the teams and within the universities themselves. It'll funnel into them, and the only thing it's going to do is help the Big Ten.
Yes,
that's all it's going to do. This is people say, and you've been saying this left and right. Oh, it doesn't make sense for them to go all the way out west. Why doesn't it? Why doesn't it make sense? It makes perfect sense.
I don't know, dude. That's like non-conference games, man. That's why you go out west for a conference matchup.
What are you talking about?
Dude, I mean, okay. So I guess for the teams that were already in the Big Ten, yeah, you're traveling out there maybe 2-3 times for football, and we'll kind of talk about the other sports as well, but we'll keep it on football focus. So you're going out there twice, maybe 3 times a year, right? Yeah, that's not too bad. But then you think about the 4 teams that just joined, all those teams out west. I mean, they're playing 75% of their games in the Midwest and out east, cross country, week by week basis. I mean, we'll see how it plays out. For football, it's not that big of a deal. You have 1 game a week, and it might take a toll a little bit. But yeah, it just doesn't make sense, and that's why. The SEC bringing in those teams, everything makes sense. The play styles, we can talk about that too. The play styles of Texas and Oklahoma, it is a little more offensive minded, I would say, than the SEC, because SEC, I think, the best teams have great offense, great defense. But Texas, at least, they're on the upturn. Oklahoma will come back. I know they had a mid-year, but you look at, and we'll keep it on the play style here. So, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. I mean, we could both agree it's a more of an offensive conference. That was.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm not saying that these games are going to start off close when they first join the conference.
Yeah, no, of course.
I
Yeah,
think
and I'm
the
not.
middle and the lower part of the Big Ten, they'll be able to match up with relatively well. But Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, even Iowa, I think is going to be a bad matchup for them. Iowa, Wisconsin, those are going to be bad matchups for these teams coming in. And Urban Meyer's said this. Joel Klatt has said this, quoting major media and analysts. The problem with the teams from the Pac-12 joining the Big Ten is not their skill position players. They match up very well on the perimeter, match up very well at quarterback, at running back. It's not those positions they struggle with getting out west. It's the big boys up front. The Big Ten is a powerhouse because we get Midwest farm boys that come in, stay in the Midwest, and go play that are 300-pounders, that are huge, massive grizzly bears, just one to rip somebody's head off. And the Pac-12, on average, is around 1.5 to 2 inches smaller and 50 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
On their defensive lines. And it shows. And Urban Meyer has said this when he's played teams out west before in the playoffs and in bowl games. He has openly said, where do we match up best? Well, on the perimeter, we're pretty even. Special teams, pretty even. Line of scrimmage, we got them beat. We're good.
Yeah.
They ain't getting to our quarterback, and we're going to get to theirs. This ain't a matchup.
So, yeah, that'll lead into kind of the next point. What's going to give? And I know we kind of talked about it yesterday a little bit. You know, in terms of, are we going to see, you're already seeing Wisconsin bring a new offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. They're looking to, like, start an air raid attack. You bring in Tanner Mordecai. You know, Iowa hasn't changed at all. I don't see them changing, but I think of, like, Illinois. You know, the team like that, like, they're built on the trenches. They're built on their big guys. But is that going to be able to win you football games if those skill position players out of the Pac-12 are just that much better? So what's going to give, you think, in terms of, is our schools in the Big Ten going to focus more on, you know, bringing in these 4-star wide receivers, air raid attack? Or are you going to see the Pac-12 kind of start to open up their recruitment to those, what you're saying, those Midwest areas, try to get some bigger bodies? You know, understand that if you want to win a football game in the Big Ten, you got to be able to run the football.
All right, well, let me start with this. Why did those Pac-12 teams come to the Big Ten?
They had to.
Right, but why specifically the Big Ten? Why didn't they go to the Big 12? Why didn't they go to the SEC? Why didn't they go to the ACC? The reason why is because of the big bodies. They're going to give first.
Okay.
When they go into bowl games, they are so undermatched to everyone else, it's not even funny. They need to be able to get into a foothold in a conference where they can recruit at a high level and get interior offensive and defensive linemen. They have to.
Yeah, which you could say, because I think, yeah, their landing spots would have been a Big 12, Big 10. You obviously go Big 10. So, yeah, so you're saying, yeah, you're thinking the Pac-12 will kind of open up. Those 4 schools, I mean, the Pac-12 ain't no more.
Right.
So those 4 schools, they're probably going to be looking, you know, to kind of change their play style.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, try to compete with the Big 10 instead of the Big 10 competing with them. I think that's a good way to put it, too.
Yeah, absolutely. They are going to be trying to get their recruitment in schedules as quickly as possible. Reason for it is when they come and these 4 teams start playing in the Big Ten, and they specifically start playing away games in the middle of the central part of the Big Ten, say Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, any of those states or teams or universities, they need to be able to show that they're right there, but they need you, right? When you have a recruit coming to that game, hey, I need you. I need you on my line to protect Caleb Williams. Okay? I need you. And that's what I think what Lincoln Riley's going to do. That's what Chip Kelly's going to do. And that's what Oregon and Washington are going to do. And the reason they're going to do it is because they know it is hard to win football games when you can't get to their quarterback and make him uncomfortable, but they can get to yours and hurt him.
Yeah.
And Caleb Williams runs for his life right now, and they're in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
And like obviously the Pac-12 is going to be discontinued after this season, but
which is also I'm excited to watch too. Just don't have to keep going.
Just
my bad.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Awesome.
Just one last season in the Pac-12. It's going to be interesting to see who wins it, right? Because this is going to be a big year for the. Last year's the Pac-12. I think all these teams are going to give it their all. Just to say we had that last championship in the Pac-12, right in that last little leg of the Pac-12. So that's going to be an interesting watch. But if your teams, this is why Lincoln Riley went to USC. If Lincoln Riley did not go to USC, why would have you left Oklahoma? You're going to a major conference that the Big 12, when he left Oklahoma, was kind of falling apart with some of their media rights and some of their ideas and their teams not necessarily competing to the level that they needed to be essentially relevant within the world of the college football playoffs. And that's what Lincoln Riley wanted to do. He wants to be relevant in the college football playoffs. So why would he have went to the Pac-12? Because that's even lower than the Big 12 at that point.
He had a better shot to win.
He had a better shot to win, but at the same time, USC was such a dumpster fire. I mean, USC was bad for so many years there after Pete Carroll left, and they were just a complete dumpster fire with allegations of giving money to recruits like Reggie Bush. And, there was a lot of years there where USC was just a complete tire fire. But what does it do for him? I believe in my heart when they offered him the job at USC, they said, we're going to get you into the Big Ten. We're going to go to the Big Ten.
Yeah, because it would have been, he's only been there for
because they announced it last year. Yeah,
or
they
2
announced,
years. 1 year.
They announced it almost right after he got hired because last year was his first year.
Yeah, let me make sure. I just want to make sure we're saying that would make sense because this isn't something that developed overnight.
No,
for any of these teams.
Because last year was his first year because he brought Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams ultimately won the Heisman. Everyone thought they were going to be completely terrible other than Caleb Williams, and then they went on an absolute tear other than when they played Utah.
Okay. Yeah, so 21.
Yep.
So would that be – so they brought him in.
In 21, and last year would have been his first 22. Year. It was 22.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So so they probably knew they were leaving. And that goes back because they opened the door for the rest of the Pac-12, I think. USC and UCLA, which, if you didn't know, from what we've heard, the reason that they left, I'm not sure if we talked about it, was that did we talk about the commission / incentive?
No, we didn't. We need to talk about that, though.
So, the Pac-12 had been struggling with their media rights. It was just like gaffe after gaffe. Pretty much every decision they made ended up turning out bad.
Oh, yeah.
So, to save some money or make it more of an even playing field, they told USC, UCLA, who probably generated the most money, hands down, that it would be a baseline instead of they get their fair share since they get so much attention, they bring in a lot of money. So they told them, we're not going to do that anymore. Everyone's going to make the same amount. They didn't like that, so they came here to the Big Ten because they also just didn't have anything in place for them. Apple TV, who's going to watch Pac-12 football on Apple TV? Who's going to pay to see that? I know I wouldn't.
You could tell me it was 99 cents. I wouldn't pay for it.
Exactly. It's it's good football, but it's just like, I don't know.
Is it good football, though?
It's just the ones you turn on, and it's like, Washington State and Utah, and it's like the fourth quarter, like 45-48 with 2 minutes left, and you see like 3 scores in the last 5 minutes. Like, that's Pac-12 football to me.
Yeah.
Which it's fun to watch, and then if you sit back, you're like, all right. That's all, like one every 2 weeks.
The only time Pac-12 football was good to watch was 11 o'clock. There was no other games on.
Exactly.
You turn it on, and they're at halftime, and it's already 35-38, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll just watch this till midnight when the bars close down.
Yeah, so I guess in that aspect, I'm excited. Maybe they'll bring an extra spark to the Big Ten, because I guess, like, I enjoy sometimes, if it's not my team, watching the 14-10 games too.
Oh yeah, those are incredibly interesting too.
But that's just kind of what we grew up with too. It's what we grew up watching.
Yeah, you're still going to get that. Like, Illinois is not going to change their identity. because these teams are. Illinois is going to stay the same. Wisconsin, yeah, they changed coaches, so they're obviously going to change identities. Michigan State's not changing their identity. They want to be a good defensive team. Michigan is not changing their identity. We're going to be a great defensive team. Ohio State, they might have to change a little bit, but I'm also biased because I'm a Michigan fan and I don't like that team down south.
That's fair. So, okay, so now we can talk about, since we kind of led into it again, the Illinois, the Wisconsins, but they're not going to change their play style. What about the Indianas?
The Indianas,
the middle of the pack, even Rutgers.
Rutgers, well, they're just
Maryland.
Maryland, I see on the up and up because they've kept the same coach. They're getting better recruits year in and year out. They're starting to slowly show it on the field. Last year, they actually had a not terrible year.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
They actually had a pretty good year last year. Tulia Tagovailoa is a pretty good quarterback. I just don't think he has the protection he needs, and he doesn't have some of the weapons that if he would have went to somewhere like Ohio State, he would have easily. This year, I think Tulia would have been the starting quarterback, and he literally looked like a Heisman runner-up.
Yeah, no, and I'm not taking that from Maryland. I guess my point is he's gone next year.
Right.
So and then you add these 4 teams, so you assume they're probably going to play 2 or 3 of them. 2 of them? One or 2?
Yeah,
if they switch to that 10-game conference. So what does that mean for bowl success then for these teams? I'd be kind of upset. If I'm a Maryland fan who, yeah, we've just had some recent success, but now it's like the odds are now against you.
Are they though?
Yes. I mean, those 4 programs are more sound than, from you know what I'm talking like?
No, because next year when they join the Big Ten, they're kind of all on even playing field. It's kind of funny, but they all are. Other than someone like Ohio State, because Kyle McCord's going to come back. In Penn State, Drew Aller's probably going to come back too next year. But if you look at it, and the teams coming in, they're probably all going to lose their quarterbacks, right? Like Washington has a dark horse for the Heisman this year. And I believe his name, so we'll get to him in a little bit. But Washington has a dark horse. He's probably going to go to the NFL.
Oh, Penix, Michael Penix.
Michael Penix, that's the name. Thank you.
Yes.
He's a dark horse for the Heisman. He's played really well late last year. Caleb Williams, he's going to the NFL. He'd be stupid to stay, not go to the NFL after this year. Even if he had a crappy year, he'd be stupid to stay. And then Bo Nix. This is his last year eligibility, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, dude's been in college for too long.
Yeah, way too long. He's like an Iowa player. It's so funny with him. I'm sorry, but I have to make fun of this real quick.
It's fair. He's kind of a meme.
It's like an Iowa player.
Yeah.
Like that one Iowa fullback who's been in college for 7 years and gotten 3 red shirts and and it's like, now I'm getting my start and I get to go smash into these linebackers, man. Like that's Bo Nix at quarterback. But they're going to lose him. And UCLA, they're starting a true freshman this year, so they're going to keep him. But UCLA has always been overshadowed by USC. UCLA really hurts to get recruits, especially last year when they had Dorian Thompson-Robinson against Caleb Williams. And that was a great game. But if UCLA would have won that game, I think UCLA would have maybe turned a page and Chip would have been able to get a lot of those California recruits like I've already talked about, get them to stay in UCLA territory instead of go to USC. But they're not quite there yet. And, someone like a Rutgers or an Indiana.
There's no way you can sit here and tell
Northwestern.
me that these teams are going to be better off.
They are, because they're getting more opportunities to recruit. They're going to be able to show their name to these West Coast recruits.
They're
going to get more.
Rutgers can't even recruit in the Midwest.
I understand that.
They ain't going to be getting no one from California. They're not.
You don't know that, though.
Yes, I do. They're not.
Oh, you don't know that.
It's Rutgers, man. And then
who has heard of Rutgers out west?
Exactly.
So their name isn't out there. They don't know who they are.
A simple Google search will tell you they are not good at football.
They're not that great, but they can be. This gives them the opportunity to be good.
In terms of bowl success, the outliers, I think you say this from a spot. Michigan will be fine.
Correct.
They'll probably still. Ohio State will be fine. Penn State will be fine.
Yep.
I think Wisconsin will end up being fine.
Yep.
Iowa's a team that I could see them falling off. As an Iowa fan, I could see them start to digress because that's a lot. Those are tough. Imagine playing. I'm telling you, Rutgers goes out to Washington, a night game. They're not going to win that game. So
I'm not saying they're going to win that game. I'm saying they're going to get exposure to
But
where
that's,
they can get
bad exposure.
Rutgers.
That's bad exposure.
No,
Yes,
exposure is exposure. It doesn't matter. Rutgers is bad no matter what right now. And they can't even recruit right out east or in the Midwest. So the more exposure they can get, even if it's bad, they might be able to flip a 3-star. And that's how they have to start. That's how you build a program, is by starting with guys that are 3 stars, and then you get maybe 1 or 2 4s. And then next year you do a little bit better because those 4 stars kind of popped. And you got to keep them for another year, and then maybe the year after you get 5 4 stars, and you get 15 3 stars, and you keep building on that success. And like I said, I never even mentioned 3 stars recruits in California, but there's a lot more. There's a lot, and there's a lot in Oregon too, in Washington, and you're just getting that exposure out west. Well, that's all you're doing.
You're definitely hitting it with the glass half full type of mentality. But I mean, you have to be real with me right now.
I am being real.
I don't, Deli.
Yes. Sullivan.
Look at Missouri in the SEC.
Correct.
Why would you go to Missouri if you're in the SEC? Why would anyone go to Rutgers if you have these teams in the Big Ten? I'm talking recruitment, but I'm talking about adding these games with these new teams on their schedule. Mm-hmm. That is good. That's not good for them.
Yes,
right now they went 1-8. With the teams that we had in their division. Yeah, they got the top 3, obviously Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. But Maryland, decent. Michigan State, they weren't very good. So, but they could beat Michigan State. They could beat Indiana. Right. It's possible wins.
Yeah.
But then you're bringing great programs, and I think it hurts them. So I don't see why Rutgers doesn't really have a say. And I don't want to keep talking about Rutgers because they probably shouldn't have even joined the Big Ten in the first place.
Let's talk about Nebraska. That's a great one.
Yeah,
Nebraska or Northwestern. Northwestern historically has been good the last couple of years.
They don't have a coach.
They don't have a coach now. But.
Yeah, but look at Nebraska. So you come in, you're in the Big 12, one of the best. They used to be Alabama.
Right.
Great program. You kind of fall off a little bit. You have a couple of good years when you join the Big Ten, but you don't win the conference, right? And now they haven't had a winning season in like 7 years.
Right.
So,
part of that is Scott Frost.
Yeah,
Scott Frost
and they're on the
was
upturn, so,
not the coach they needed to have.
I don't want to jump into, specifics. As a whole, Nebraska will be on the upturn. But Minnesota, I could see them really starting to struggle now. They've had good success. These teams will not.
PJ Fleck is a great recruiter, though.
But they you can talk about recruits all you want. It comes down to, and I'm struggling with a sane mind how you can say adding 4 really good opponents, 2 to your schedule, that would be better off for your bowl success. Getting to 6 wins, that's absurd.
Here's the problem. You're saying 4 really good opponents, but you don't know if they're really good or if the Pac-12 was that bad. Because the Pac-12 has been a dumpster fire for 10 years. And yeah, USC, UCLA did pretty good last year in the Pac-12 other than Utah. All right, and so did Washington have some success, and so did Oregon. But they were the only teams that were, kind of okay, and the rest of the Pac-12, the whole Pac-12 itself has been a complete dumpster fire for so many years. And like I said, they're not going to match up on the offensive and defensive line with these teams. Even the bad teams in the Big Ten, I don't think they match up. And it's going to be very interesting, very early. I think Minnesota is going to be perfectly fine. Rutgers should never have joined the Big Ten in the first place. That was not.
So this hurts them.
Well, they're not even really supposed to be in the Big Ten. They should be an FCS team, to be honest.
It hurts in Indiana.
Indiana's going to be fine. They're going to be fine for football and basketball. They're going to be. I'm telling you, there's not one team in the Big Ten that I am worried about these teams with them joining. There's just going to be more exposure, more possibility for recruiting. Because right now, you know who has all these recruits on lockdown? Georgia, Alabama.
Screw it.
And some new USC.
Let's not go to Alabama. Let's go to Indiana to play some football.
Hey, if you're telling me right now, there's a chance I go to a team that's going to
very bad.
Visit my home state, play in my home state. I can have my family come to that game, and once This is another thing we're going to have to talk about is NIL and the collectives, because this is also a huge part of this with these teams coming in. But if you're telling me if I was a recruit and I could see my family once a year from teams that were going to that state to play,
Yeah.
I would definitely take it in a heartbeat. And I'll say this right now, with the NIL, specifically collectives. Collectives are interesting, to say the least. The collectives essentially are paying for recruits at this point, right? Like,
I think you're going to play this right into my argument, but go ahead.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
So, if we look at the SEC collectives, like Georgia, like Alabama, like Texas. Texas is stupid with their collectives. They have so much oil money, it's not even funny. Why do you think Archer Manning went there? He's getting $1 million a year.
And it's local, too. He was from Texas.
He was from Texas, but he's like...
Yeah, I know. He's getting a lot of money.
Oh, man, he's getting a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? And so with the collectives now, the Big Ten, the only problem the Big Ten right now struggles with is some of these teams don't have their collectives in order. And Michigan really doesn't even have a collective in order. It's kind of a dumpster fire right now for the majority of it. But the only thing that these 4 teams hurting coming in the Big Ten is the fact that they have a small advantage on the collectives because they somewhat have their collectives in order. Like, especially Oregon. Oregon really has a collective in order because that Nike guy just gives them all that money, and he does not care. And USC has theirs in order pretty well, too, because they just get... This is another thing I heard, and this one, it was Urban Meyer, and he was on a podcast, I believe, and he said, he's like, I won't name names, but I have heard of the collective from USC and some donors donating in the millions to that collective, and that they've been on a bidding war for recruits. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, and that
But
plays into my argument. They have
really
a lot of money.
Yeah, it does.
Rutgers
They
has
do
no
have
money.
a lot.
Indiana doesn't have an NIL for football. Michigan State probably doesn't have too much money. Iowa doesn't have a lot of money.
Michigan State's has more than you think. Trust me.
Well, even if they do, they don't have. I mean, yes, direct turnaround. 4 teams, they might struggle in the beginning, but they have You're telling me they have the foundations to really do a lot of things right, and that hurts the rest of the conference here. It hurts the mid-major teams in this conference.
I think it just makes it more better. I think it just makes it better.
They might get better, but they'll still suck.
They're gonna get better though. It's all it takes is 1 year. 1 year, USC's bad, and you have a foothold in California for recruits.
I mean, we can roll with that. We can agree to disagree.
I'm telling you, this is the only thing that this is gonna do is be great, because no matter what, there's always more recruits than there are roster spots for teams. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, I'm picking up what you're laying down with the recruitment.
So if you're a recruit now with the collectives, the only thing they have to do is somewhat get their collectives in order. That's all these teams have to do. And they don't even have to be huge collectives. They just have to be little collectives. If you're a recruit and you're getting recruited by USC and you're getting recruited by Indiana, if you go to USC, you're going to get a little bit more money, but it offsets with how much everything is in California. Or you can go to Indiana, you get the same amount, and the taxes are lower. On top of that, when you go to USC, you're going to be the second to third string. You're going to have to wait 1, 2, maybe 3 years before you can even play. Or Indiana, you can go and show who you are.
Okay, yes. So this one I do agree. And not even more so, NIL does play a part.
Yes.
But with the transfer portal.
Yes.
I think, these teams, if USC, they're getting all these guys, they ain't playing. You're looking to transfer. We saw it this year. I know we did get a lot from, the SEC coming in. But I could name a handful of quarterbacks that, went from a Michigan to Illinois, Brandon Peters.
Yep.
McNamara.
Yep.
So that part I
Joe
do.
Milton to Tennessee.
Yeah, that part I do agree, but that was out of conference.
Right. Okay.
So,
yeah. No.
So if you can get these guys, in the conference, I could see them benefiting maybe from that. But
I see a huge benefit on that.
the outlier and the trend, I feel like doesn't help because
It
you want
does.
to
It
make
will.
bowl games.
It will.
You want to make bowl games.
Man, do you want to make bowl games, or do you want to be within the 12 to who knows how many, because they've been talking about expanding into even more college playoffs now. You want to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, but
And
realistically speaking,
you know who's going to have a better chance of making more teams in the playoffs now? The Big Ten.
oh yeah, 100%. But that'll benefit the top half. I think that's where your mind's at. The top half, it will be very good. And now Michigan has more of a chance to get these guys in California, like you're saying.
Right.
Ohio State has more of a chance. But here's
the
one thing with football, it does hurt those teams. And I feel like we've been going on too long about this, so I'll just kind of let you close it, and then we can move on just to kind of like you're talking about the playoffs. I feel like that'd be something to talk about too.
Okay. So for the playoffs, with these 4 new teams coming in, now the Big Ten, arguably, okay, the traditional Big Ten, the East and the West. Obviously, the East you had Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, and they tried and kill each other to make one, maybe if we had a bad year in the SEC, 2 playoff spots, right? Okay, with the expansion of the college football playoffs now, there's a possibility of the traditional Big Ten as it sits right now without these 4 teams coming in, okay, to get maybe 2 to 3. I can only see 3, and maybe it would be like a Penn State or if like a team from the West, like Wisconsin, Iowa, Purdue, had a really good year.
Yeah.
But I see now with these 4 teams coming in, everything is based on analytics, right? That's how they pick a lot of these teams. They don't go off of feel. A lot of it's analytical. The Big Ten's numbers are going to be better,
yes,
because they're going to have more recruits that are higher ranked, which is part of the reason you get selected over another team.
Or strength of schedule.
And strength of schedule. And all these different factors that come into this huge long algorithm that essentially make, right as of right now, the 4 teams, but eventually expanded to the 12. Right?
Yeah, which they I just want to point out too, they had 6 at-large bids for conference winners.
Right.
They're looking to change that right now because of the Pac-12.
Yeah.
So they're like from 6 to 5, which would mean the Big Ten could sneak more. So
Yep.
We pulled up last year's here, and like you're saying, so they got the algorithms and stuff, but looking at the Big Ten, you would have got Penn State in.
Yep. Washington, because Washington would be in the Big Ten now. They were ranked 12th.
Very true.
Oregon was close. They would have been in the first 4 out.
Yeah. And then Michigan,
Ohio State.
You could get 3 or 4.
Yep.
Obviously.
And
those at-larges, you'd probably actually lose Penn State and Washington, and because you probably go to 5,
right.
would be a Big Ten team. Automatically.
If you had the at-larges, you already have the at-larges in there. You have ACC and Clemson. You have the SEC in Georgia, the Big Ten in Michigan, the Big 12 in TCU, and who's the other?
It's like
There's 4,
like the best of like the other conferences, I think.
Is it? Okay.
Like for the UCFs, like when they had their run, like Western Michigan, I can think of. I believe. I'm not. So
actually, we would have had more teams because I didn't even see that USC Southern California is right down there too. There's another Big Ten team that's coming in.
Yeah.
So we still would have had, and Oregon, I think maybe could have taken Utah's spot, because if you're telling me Oregon had an early year loss, but if you were to tell Oregon, hey, guess what, you got 12. There's 12 playoff teams now. They would have fought a lot harder, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
And they could have maybe snuck in there. So you're talking about now with 12, and with how good the strength of schedule is with the Big Ten, how good the recruiting is going to be in the Big Ten. The algorithm favors the Big Ten now, and the SEC obviously, but the SEC, other than Georgia and Alabama, usually kills itself.
Tennessee though. I will say
Tennessee,
they're on the upturn.
They are on the small upturn, but they still get killed by Georgia and Alabama. They're like the SEC.
They beat Bama.
They're like the Penn State of the SEC right now.
Yeah, they
are.
They're
right there, but they still got a long way to go.
Yeah, it's like tier 1, and then tier 2.
Yeah.
And it's like they're the only team in tier 2.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I definitely pick up what you're laying down, and then looking at that, Strength of schedule, we already kind of touched on, but let's dive in a little more. Really affects, the college football playoff. How are they gonna fix the conference schedule? You say, so you got 12 games. Right now it's 3 non-conference, 9 conference games.
Right.
I anticipate that gets changed 10 to
10
2.
and 2.
Yep, 10 and 2. And they released the schedule already for UCLA and USC.
Mm-hmm. That's all going to have to get reworked.
Yeah,
though,
so
believe.
I mean, if they might have to change up the whole system too, because you can't, with those West teams, like I'm saying, you guarantee a home and away. This will kind of touch on the traveling. The traveling will play a factor. So I'm intrigued to see what they do with this. Do they keep the same format, or do they go to something else, like this 3 protected opponent system? I think they would.
Man, it would be tough. I think you're going to have protected rivalry games no matter what.
Yeah,
those are going,
of course.
You're going to have protected. Michigan is always going to play Ohio State and Michigan State.
Yeah.
There's just no way you don't play those games. Iowa is always going to play Nebraska, Wisconsin.
Yeah. All trophies.
Those are trophy games.
Indiana, Purdue, that's a big one.
Yep, that's another big one. UCLA, USC, they're always going to play each other. Washington and Oregon is kind of an unsung rivalry.
Now it definitely is.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be when they were in the Pac-12 though. Like, that was a rivalry. I think that's a trophy game too. I could be wrong, but I think they have a trophy in that.
Yeah, let me look it up. But so what if they went back to divisions with the geographical kind of issue that's been?
Well, yeah,
established?
They could go back to divisions, and if they went to divisions, they have 18 teams, so it would be 9 per division, and then you'd play. I mean, that could work actually. You could play 9 division games and then one cross division game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That could work. So it would be 9. So I think the 9 West teams would be the 4 West Coast. So USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois.
Yeah.
Northwestern, Purdue, Indiana, Michigan State, Ohio State, Maryland, Rutgers, Penn State.
Yeah, it's tough because it's like it'll just lead to
still
the same problems.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're gonna have the same problems we did this. Well, are we though? That's actually, you think about that. That actually kind of helps the strength of schedule because you're moving Northwestern into the East. So the East now, as of right now, the East is obviously the superior.
Yeah, hands down.
I mean, it's hands down the superior side of the conference.
Yeah,
but with the addition of UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, that brings some stiff competition to the West. Like, now you have 6 teams in the West that are really, really good right now. And I don't want to say they're as good as Michigan and Ohio State, but they're that second tier for sure. I think they're maybe not as close as Penn State is, but they're pretty close. In Iowa, USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon, I think they're all.
You run into more issues though.
Yeah, because the West is really going to beat up on itself then too.
And it's just going to have to go everywhere. They're going to have to go everywhere. Yeah. They have to go out west.
I think you just need to do away with divisions.
And just roll with the same format.
Yep, and we just need to have protected games against the protected rivals, against the protected trophy games. Was that Washington-Oregon game a trophy game?
It's not a trophy game, but it is a rivalry.
Okay.
Like, it is a pretty big rivalry. So, yeah, bringing that over will be... Obviously, any rivalry game is fun to watch,
right,
even if both teams suck or one team sucks and one doesn't. Because, sometimes
it's interesting.
Stuff happens.
Yeah. Look at Michigan State, Michigan. The fumbled punt when we should have
the snap.
Yeah, we should have won that. And that's still... That one doesn't hurt as bad as the Ohio State chain game. Same year after.
Oh, yeah, but...
Yeah, when we couldn't stop JT from...
Yeah, that's still up for debate. I see it on Big Ten Network, but...
Yeah.
So... Shoot, I mean, that's like everything we were looking to talk about, I think, in this one. We kind of did get carried away on the mid-major teams, but I don't know. We'll agree to disagree on that. We'll save it for another time.
We'll come back to that, I think. That's a good topic to come back to in a later discussion. Obviously, this first episode, wanted to talk about the new Big Ten, right? We got a huge Big Ten conference now with 18 teams coming in, and 4 teams coming in, and 18 now total being within our conference. And I think we'll benchmark this. We'll probably talk about it maybe mid-season again if we want to make another episode about that. But the next couple episodes, I'm really excited for. Really, really excited for.
Yes, yeah, very true. So this is kind of the kickoff for the Big Ten season here, and Duma Sports kind of, testing some waters. Just going to throw some content your guys' way, and we do appreciate you tuning in. Collectively here in the next about week, we got some previews coming. We're going to actually preview the whole season, every team in the next one, and then we're going to deep dive into a couple our personal teams for now, and then, if things go well, and, we'll just keep rolling with it. But, yeah, so for now, I guess that's all we got. Definitely subscribe, follow, all that stuff. We're on Instagram, X/Twitter. Still weird.
Gotta love the X.
Yeah. So if you drop a follow on there, we're going to throw out weekly power rankings probably throughout the whole season. So, yeah, definitely tune in. And thanks for watching, Deli.
Sully.
Signing off.
And thank you for watching Big Ten Football Junkies presented by Duma Sports.